What's up, y'all? This your girl, Jay Renee with Prison Ride Radio. I hope that you're doing well. This morning, we have a brother on the phone. His name is Kevin Keith, and he is saying that he's wrongfully convicted, okay? We're going to jump right into it. There's no time like the present. How you doing, bro? Good morning.
I'm doing pretty good. I thank you for this opportunity to let me speak to the people.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm doing pretty good.
I am glad that you're doing well. So I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. So tell the people a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
Well, my name is Kevin Keith. I'm from Crestline, Ohio, a small town outside of Mansfield, Ohio. I've been incarcerated for about 30 years now, and currently what I do is mentor young men in certain programs to try to get them to a good place.
Okay. Thank you very much for, being a mentor. It's something that's very important that can be missed because, most facilities aren't providing it. So the fact that you picked up those reins is very important and commendable.
Well, certainly a need for it. So
Yeah, most definitely. All right. So, you say you've been incarcerated for 30 years. I know that can be a lot on a person. Besides mentoring, what are some of the things that you do that, keeps you in the fight and keeps you day to day?
Well, that is one of the main things that I do. Is I'm a faith guy. I'm a Christian, and with that being the case, I live out the principles outlined in the Bible. And what I mean by that is I do a lot of outreach programs, support like hats for the homeless, and because the simple fact is, Jay, I could take this situation and be a bitter guy. I got a lot of reasons to be bitter. But I decided a long time ago not to pick that up. And so while I'm here and fighting for my freedom, I see a lot of young men who are lost in their way. And so I form programs and I facilitate programs and I mentor. And outside of the programs, I might be in a pod with a guy or a housing area with a guy. I continue to mentor with guys. But the foundation of my stability is my faith.
That's a good foundation. All right. So let's go back 30 years ago to, when you were picked up. How were you processing all of that?
Well, I'm still processing it right now. I woke up this morning processing it. Matter of fact, every day I wake up, I'm processing it because it's an experience that you can't actually describe, but I'll put it this way here. I read a story about a guy, Rip Van Winkle, and, he falls asleep, wakes up 20 years later. And so a lot of days when I wake up, I kind of got that experience to where did these 30 years go to? And so it can, some days it's more of a struggle than other days, but my go-to is my faith. Everybody got a go-to to find that place of peace, and mine is my faith. But the process of my incarceration, it continues. Because I really haven't accepted it, but the years are fast.
I can understand that. So let's go back to, the courtroom. I know that, you obtained a lawyer. Do you feel like you were properly represented in the courtroom? Like, how did that, all play out?
Well, actually, in my prior life, I sold drugs. Now, I'm not going to get into, whether I was a small drug dealer, which I was, but it don't matter. Small drug dealer, large drug dealer is all the same. You're affecting people's lives in a bad way and destroying your community at the same time. So I got to take that one on the chin. Now, The attorney that I had happened to be an attorney who represented local drug dealers. And I happened to be out on bond during the time of these murders. So the attorney that I had was not well versed in death penalty cases in the first place. But keep in mind, I'm 30 years old, naive. This is an attorney he's really a civil attorney. He's not experienced in death penalty cases. So you can kind of see it kind of set the stage for ineffective assistance of counsel. That was pretty much how things looked on the defensive side, on the defendant side. Now on the prosecutor side, they had all access to funds, had a team of prosecutors, and this was a heinous crime, had a lot of media attention focused in on it. So do the math on that right there, and you kind of see what kind of situation I was in as far as being represented.
Yeah, I can see that. Anytime the media is involved, it always it makes it like a circus kind of thing going on. You know, we've seen it happen in lots of cases. So,
exactly.
Did you know the victims of this crime? Did you have?
Well, Crestline being a small area, all the black families in Crestline, to go back a little bit, our grandfathers or great-grandfathers ended up in this small town because they worked on a railroad.
Okay.
They set up right there, and we are the fruit of their foundation. I'm setting up in a small town. It was a railroad town. And so I'm familiar with every black family in Crestline. Now, the two youngest victims, Quentin and Cornita Reeves, I was more familiar with them because I was more familiar with their father, Demetrius Reeves.
Okay. And you said more familiar, like you seen them around, since it was such a close knit.
More familiar, like me and maybe three times a week.
Okay, all right, I understand what you're saying. All right, so I mean, okay, so knowing how close knit this town is, it's a small town. Have you ever, do you have any clue of why they tried to pin this on you instead of finding what really happened?
Well, actually, let's go back. Here's the scene. I was arrested with other individuals, and apparently one of the victims' relatives was an informant. And so when I got arrested, I was shocked because actually when they arrested me, I thought I was being arrested back on another drug charge because I was out on bond. So when the police raided my house, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why are they coming at me? Because I haven't sold drugs since I got arrested and came out on bond.
Right.
But when they didn't even tell me why I was being arrested. They roughed me up a bit and took me over to Bucyrus, which is in Crawford County. And when they got me there, all I seen was a bunch of media and people asking me, the media asking me, well, Mr. Keith, did you commit the murders? Of course, no. So I give them this here. If you're selling drugs and a crime happened like that, and one of the relatives of the guy happened to be an informant, you can understand somebody getting arrested. So I can understand me getting arrested on suspicion. Okay. Now, what I was not expecting was it was like a perfect storm. Bill Clinton had come to I was in Columbus, Ohio, and he made reference to the crime. Because back then in 1994, the Democratic Party and some Republicans as well, but Bill Clinton was pushing his get tough on crime bill. Okay? And so him using me as his poster child to promote this bill Because you got to understand, when they passed that bill in '94, I believe they eventually got it passed in '94. But while he was campaigning on this bill, local law enforcement were receiving millions of dollars. So imagine this crime taking place, and the President of the United States is in the area, and he gives a speech, and he referred to you and the crime. You can throw due process and so with him giving millions of dollars to local police officers, which was a package that was in the bill, you can understand how anybody who was involved with the case, now they feel justified in anything they do. But as mentioned, Kevin Keith and the crime. And then to make things worse, when the newspaper came out, the local paper came out, they had me on the front page and Bill Clinton on the front page. They had me in cuffs getting arrested, and Bill Clinton at the BCI lab shooting a gun. I guess he was doing target practice, but they outlined the speech that he made reference to me in the crime.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I got into journalism is because I realized how powerful press can be, even when it's a lie. You know? Yeah, that's crazy. I know that had to blow your mind.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot right there. I know that was a lot. That blew my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. What are some other things that you feel isn't considered, when people look at your case?
Well, I think this here. Listen in the media. Anything the police said back then, it kind of stuck, especially when you're in a small town, a small county, Crawford County, where you have 3 towns in Crawford County. You have Crestline, where I was born, then you have Gagan, and you have the Sires. And those are pretty much white counties.
Mm-hmm.
And with that makeup right there alone, like I said, when the president makes that statement and all the fairness went out the door, because you actually had people calling in prior to Bill Clinton making that speech. You had people calling in like, well, that ain't the guy that I saw.
Right.
The guy that I saw was smaller. So you had people giving different descriptions of the person that they saw. But soon as Bill Clinton gave that speech, law enforcement just toned it. They got tunnel vision at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because now they have arrested me, and they kind of boxed themselves in, so to speak. And so with the media, if the media had investigated what the police was telling them, instead of just printing it, say for example like this, when they arrested the chief of police, he gave a hurry up and gave a press conference. One of the things the mayor of the Sires said was that even though they didn't have funds to support a death penalty case, they was going to find funds if they had to do a fundraiser. Okay? Now, this is the first day I get arrested. They talking like this. And so the chief of police left the media with the impression that I was a drug lord. And I owned a house that I was living in, which was not true. Me and my fiance at the time were paying a mortgage.
Wow.
And so they painted that picture, and the media just printed it. They didn't question it. They never questioned me about it, and they just printed it. And see, once you print something in the paper in a small town, it sticks, and that's what it does. Everything they said stuck. They said they arrested me because I ran a car into a telephone pole or a ditch. I ran the car into a ditch, and the car left a license plate impression. And they traced the license plate impression back to me. Well, my car had a 30-day tag. Okay?
Right.
And so a 30-day tag can't leave an imprint in the snow.
It definitely
you can't
cannot.
do that.
It definitely cannot.
And so, right. Yeah. So the media didn't question that. They just printed it. Then when it came to be a falsehood, and they knew it to be a falsehood, they didn't recant it in the newspaper. So people are left with the first impression what the police said, even though it was a lie.
Yeah. Just like you said, it happens in small towns. It happens in cities and major cities too. I seen it happen with my own eyes.
Well, yeah, that's what they do. And so now one of the main topics of discussion is truth and falsehoods when it pertains to the media. Well, we know about that as being African Americans, black people if you prefer, and we know a little bit more about that falsehood depicted to be true than what's going on right now. So they just now catching up with it. But we've been had an understanding of that. We've been victims of that.
Yeah, we have. Since the beginning of it. Since the beginning of it. All right. So I definitely want to discuss some more things that prove your innocence. I want to just ask you straight up, when these crimes were being committed, where were you?
Where was I at?
Yes.
I'm glad you asked that question. I'm going to be brief here because any kind of, say for example, if I tell you that I went to the supermarket and the next time I give an interview and I tell somebody on my way to the supermarket I picked up a sub sandwich at the sub shop, the prosecutor, he would use that as a contradictory statement.
Okay.
This is what happened. I was at my aunt's house. I was at my aunt's house at the time of the murders. And that would be 9 o'clock. Now, my aunt Gracie, she was like, I called my Aunt Gracie my Aunt B. She was like Aunt B in the Andy Griffin Show, if you're familiar with that show.
Okay.
And so they talked to my aunt about my alibi, and this is the question that they asked my aunt, and this was my aunt's response. My aunt told them that I was at her house at 9 o'clock. Then the reporter said, "Are you telling us that he was at your house at the time of the murders?" My aunt responded, "Well, I don't know what time that was." Okay. Work. What the media and the prosecutor did was they spun it, and like my aunt had gave two different questions to my alibi. They spun it like 1 minute she knew I was at her house at 9 o'clock, and the next minute she didn't know.
Right.
And so, and that was hard for my aunt. She was an elderly woman. That was kind of hard for her to take because, she, not just me being under attack, but she felt like she was under attack. She was a long-time resident of Crestline, Ohio, well-respected woman.
Right.
And so when the media did that to her, it kind of hurt her.
I can imagine so. I can definitely imagine so. What were you going to say?
Well, I would say that's a hard pill for me to swallow right there. That here's an honest lady that's being honest, and they took advantage of her. And that's something I got to. That's one of my struggles. Is my aunt, because my aunt was loved by everybody, and for them to do that, that's something that kind of sticks with me. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's all right. Are there any other major points to prove your innocence that you feel the listeners should know?
Oh, besides me not doing, we could go on and on. We'll be here all day.
Well, let them know.
Let me say this here.
Yeah, let them know where to find your information too, like things that can help them to, get a better grasp on your situation as well.
Okay, now what I want to do is I want to be specific in these. Now I know the Kim Kardashian podcast was on Spotify. Okay, I can refer them to that, but I got another site too. Actually, if they go in www.kevinkeith, free Kevin Keith, I'm quite sure they'll find it too. But I want to be specific when I direct people in that direction. So for now, I'll just go with the podcast, Kim Kardashian podcast. and we can follow other information up later on.
Okay, most definitely. But yeah, so any other points? You say we can go on all day long. Is there anything else you want to add, though?
Yeah. Well, I do want to say this here. You're a journalist, and for the viewer, I know you're doing your research, and so what I want to add, besides me being innocent, is there's so many other details. I would like to probably elaborate on the alternative suspects. But then again, like I said, they had to go to the podcast, Kardashian's podcast on Spotify. Listen to the series of interviews, and you can get a grasp of what a lot of things that I would like you to know. Certainly, you will want to start there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good place to start. It's a wealth of information, and it's broken down in a way that it could be understood. Well, bro,
Exactly.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to address the listeners. I let everyone, have a moment. So I want to extend that to you. The floor is yours.
Well, I thank you for that. I like to say this here. I do have concerns for those who are affected by mass incarceration due to the Get Tough on Crime bill Clinton signed, and our current president and vice president were the authors and publishers of that bill. And I do have concerns about how they are, to be specific, how they are portraying themselves as the next saviors of prison reform. Now, being the position that they took on Get Tough on Crime bill, which affected and kind of established the mass incarceration that we see today, I think the brothers and sisters should really consider the position that put us in as a race. Now, I do believe that, I sold drugs, okay? I got caught for selling drugs, locked me up for selling drugs. Don't lock me up for something I didn't do and then give a speech to promote your bill. Then when somebody be it Hunter Biden or anybody else related to one of the politicians, get into some criminal activity, I expect for you to be tough on crime in that case too. Now, I'm willing to say that, given my position here. That's not a popular thing for me to say, but we're speaking to the people here. And the people who have been affected by this Get Tough on Crime bill should be out in droves. Because this is the time now when those who pushed for that bill and got this mass incarceration and a lot of these unjust laws established, now they find that their kids find themselves in certain situations. So I would like them to go on a tour about getting tough on crime at this point. So I would like the people, it's times like this that we have to be vocal. And those who have created unjust laws, who we find ourselves victims of in most cases, we need to hold them accountable for their criminal activity. So I would like the people to think about that as you go about your day-to-day. And again, thank you for this opportunity, Jay. I appreciate you letting me speak to the people. People, yeah, I was just saying that I can't repeat exactly what I said, but it was along the lines of, I appreciate this time with the people, giving me this opportunity.